Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree. I am a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror. And this is the May 15th episode of the Horror Trans podcast, as of what I refer to it as. Obviously I'm not doing an audio portion anymore, so there's no actual pod feed, but it is what it is. You're here, and congratulations. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy this episode, because I got a lot of news. I watched a lot of fucking movies since last week, and I got some interesting topics. This one should be a meatier episode than I've done in the last couple of weeks. True story, I stayed up all night last night, so I'm wide-ass awake because of this stuff, which I'm not going to show you the label, but it's a energy drink that fuels my brain. I watched 3 movies last night. 2 of them, I watched 2 3-hour movies back to back. I started the night off watching Schindler's List with my friend, who you can sometimes hear on the Patreon bonus commentaries. Her name is Gavi. So go over to patreon.com/Stephanie Bree and check out those commentaries if you want to hear me and Gavi watch, horror movies, etc. I'm going to just say this about Schindler's List. It is and it isn't a horror movie. I know it's technically a historical drama, but god damn, that movie is fucking intense. It's heavy. And there are some legit scary moments in that movie. And it is a legit terrifying thing that happens in that movie. What makes it even worse in terms of, horror is it's a fucking true story. And not just, a serial killer or, something bad happened. No, it's something really... It's, probably the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of humanity. I mean, it's fucking... God damn. The movie's going to punch you in the gut, is all I'm going to say. But I actually watched a lot of movies last week. So I'll just go down the list. I watched most of these with my friend Gavi. We watched Megalodon Rising. This is a, I guess it's sort of a The Meg knockoff, if you will. Not very good. We also watched Sharks of the Corn, which I've already done my review of. So you can go check that out if you want. The review, not the fucking movie. We watched Hudson Hawk, a lesser known, but I would argue greater than normal, I would say, for the actor. Bruce Willis action movie from, I believe, 1990 or 91. We also rewatched The Meg, which I talked about. I actually saw The Meg in theaters when it was brand new. We also watched Deep Blue Sea. I may have already talked about these, though, on last week's episode, so I could be repeating myself. But last night, we watched Schindler's List, a 3-hour, I'll say, thriller drama, historical thriller drama. And then we watched American Honey, a 3-hour day in the life of a girl on a road trip. Great movie, by the way. I don't mean to diminish it. It's just there's no genre to American Honey. Other than, I guess, I've heard it referred to as slice of life type of film. I mean, it's not really a drama, but it has some almost dramatic moments, but it's not even at all a comedy. But it's I don't know. I guess slice of life fits. American Honey is, to me, it's I don't know. Probably, I felt watching American Honey probably how people in the 60s felt watching Easy Rider for the first time. I fell in love with this movie the first time I watched it. And this was my second time watching it. And even though it's a 3-hour movie, it gets to the end and I'm I don't want it to be over yet. I'm give me another hour. Give me 90 more minutes. I want to follow this girl. I want to see where she goes. Does she get her house? Does she quit her job? Does she go back to her family? Does she... Whatever. There's so many... I don't care. I could just sit and... I could just watch her fucking play guitar and smoke pot for another 45 minutes, you know? I just love this movie. Then this morning, after sitting through 2 3-hour movies back to back, I failed miserably in my attempt to live stream my reaction to Scream 1996, which I have already seen a dozen times. I was having it wasn't so much technical difficulties as it was miscommunication between me and the YouTube. Partially because, it was fucking 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had been up all night. But I got it sorted out and eventually did do the stream. Last week, or earlier this week, I think it was Sunday, actually, me and Gavi also did a bonus Patreon commentary where we watched Night of the Creeps, which I've already done a review of, so go check out the review, and while you're at it, go ahead and check out Night of the Creeps. You'll love it. I guarantee it. And then we both also rewatched Two-Headed Shark Attack, which I thought I had already reviewed, which is why I took it off my list of movies to review. But going back through my old videos, I don't see it listed. So I must have reviewed it under the old format, possibly, or it's one that I just, I don't know, when I was talking about the Meg or whatever, I must have deleted it by accident. I don't know. But I'll be talking about Two-Headed Shark Attack in the not-too-distant future. So let's get into the news and rumors. We got a lot, and unfortunately our top story is not a pleasant one. But it's not as sad as it sounds. Here's the headline from Bloody Disgusting, which, unfortunately, most of these articles today are going to be from Bloody Disgusting because I didn't find a lot else. I usually look at iHorror News, Horror News Net, Joe Blow, Fangoria, and a few others, but Bloody Disgusting seems to be the one that just gives me the headlines more often. So I'm not sponsored at all. Not at all. I don't work for them. I'm not affiliated with them at all. This is just, I just search horror news in Google, and these are the websites that pop up. So, unfortunately, here's the headline. Legendary filmmaker Roger Corman has passed away at age 98. Now, I already did a YouTube short on my main channel where I mentioned I'm going to be talking about Roger Corman in a future video. He's been on my list for horror icons for ages, and I've been putting it off because, one, I actually, to be honest, didn't know he was still alive. I thought he must have died a long time ago because he hasn't been doing anything. I'm not going to read the article. Obviously, he died. He lived a full life, and he's done a whole bunch of shit. Like, awesome stuff you're very familiar with, or you've seen works by other people who were inspired by him, informed by him, or who learned from him. So he has had an impact on films you've watched, whether you knew it or not. Next up, this one comes also from Bloody Disgusting. It says, quote, Crystal Lake, Kevin Williamson, and Brian Fuller planned an, quote, hour-long chase episode. They are saying that Hannibal creator Brian Fuller is no longer the showrunner of A24 and Peacock's Friday the 13th TV series, Crystal Lake, with A24 choosing to go a different way with the material. It doesn't get into the specifics. Kevin Williamson from Scream said he had been on board to write an episode of the Crystal Lake series, and Williamson took to Twitter today to tease some of those original plans. Blah, blah, blah. Alright, companion to that is the news article, actually. Update, A24 going, quote, a different way with the Friday the 13th TV series. So again, they recapped all the confusion about the Crystal Lake series being canceled and then not canceled and what's going on. And now they're reporting that the project is being retooled behind the scenes. Who is this? I don't have time for that. Fuller writes on Instagram, adapting classic horror is something I have some experience with. These shows require a vision that elevates and transforms, as well as delivers what audiences have come to expect, which is an ambitious and risky endeavor. Blah, blah, blah. He talks about working at Hannibal. And now it says the studios are searching for a new showrunner for the series. Nothing new has been reported yet. Okay. That's unfortunate. So, it sounds like something happened behind the scenes. There's something's going on. We don't know the full story yet, but it sounds like some kind of shakeup is happening as probably a result of some kind of conflict or something that we'll learn about in the future. But we don't know yet. We can only speculate. This one is also from Bloody Disgusting. It says Shark Week 2024 will be hosted by John Cena and is premiering July 7th. Now, I know that's not technically horror per se, but there's a lot of, shark movies are a subgenre of the B-movie subgenre of horror. So, yeah, okay, sure, why not? This is kind of interesting, I guess, but moving on. This one says, The Hermit, first look at Lou Ferrigno as a cannibal pig farmer in new horror movie. It's basically just a picture. You can go look at it if you want. And it says the man dragged on a vacation to the woods, two self-absorbed teens venture off trail, stumble across a farm, go in, see animal heads hanging from the wall, and fight for their lives against an unstoppable cannibal pig farmer. So, I don't know, that I guess the draw is Lou Ferrigno, but like, who even remembers him? I mean, that Incredible Hulk TV series was 50 years ago, people. Wolfland, Pierce Brosnan will be starring in a werewolf movie. It is described, according to Bloody Disgusting, as an epic odyssey. Directed by Sean Brosnan and Sean's movie star dad, Pierce Brosnan, has signed on to star. Variety reports that Wolfland will feature, quote, creature and design effects from Imaginarium Studios, who did Planet of the Apes and The Lord of the Rings. The company founded by Andy Serkis. Alright, so we're going to have a 15-minute transformation scene. I'm already bored. I don't care anymore. Alright. Anytime you go into, and you're bragging about your werewolf movie, and your big draw is the special effects, I'm out. I don't give a fuck. Just make a werewolf movie, goddammit. Just fucking who cares? I don't need a 15-minute transformation scene. Alright, this one is a show called Agatha All Along, from Bloody Disgusting. It says, brings darkness to Disney Plus this September. Catherine Hahn is back as the bewitching villain, these are their words, Agatha Harkness, in the upcoming Disney Plus series, Agatha All Along. Confirmed is the official title of the upcoming series. The first two episodes on September 18th. Tony winner Patti LuPone joins the previously announced Aubrey Plaza and Joe Locke, as well as Ali Ahn, Maria Dizia, and Shashir Zamata. Emma Caulfield Ford will be back as the character Dottie. Jack Schaefer from WandaVision is on board the series as writer, executive producer. This one almost has me interested. I've lost interest in the superhero side of the MCU. I don't give a fuck about what they're doing with the superheroes. Ant-Man, Captain America, none of them. I'm over it. They wrapped it up with Endgame. Rest in peace. Let's move on with our lives. But I loved WandaVision, and even though it's kind of a superhero movie, the Multiverse of Madness, it's more of a horror movie than a superhero movie. I loved it. So I'm interested in this because I loved WandaVision. And this looks interesting because Agatha is an interesting character. I'm a pagan witch myself. So I have, sort of I'd like to see how they handle it. Especially considering it's Disney. I don't think they're going to have her as a, quote, devil worshiper. But we'll see what happens. It's hard to say. But I'm here for it. This, I'm actually might be interested enough that this could get me to resubscribe to Disney Plus for, a month once all the episodes are finally out. So, yeah, this looks interesting. This is called You Lose, You Die. WWE superstar Charlotte Flair starring in new horror movie. From Averted Vision Pictures, the movie You Lose, You Die will star Freddie Rodriguez and WWE superstar Charlotte Flair. Carlos Suarez wrote the screenplay and will direct. It follows a sociopathic tech expert, Mr. Fantastique, who runs a popular show on the dark web with two other sociopathic tech experts, Miss Perfect and Mr. Creep. On the show, thousands of viewers vote on games and challenges for prisoners to participate in. Alright, so, I guess a Running Man knockoff? Alright, I'll pass. I don't know if this is interesting to y'all, but I thought it was interesting. This one comes from JoeBlow.com. The movie's called The Scurry, and it says, the headline is, Ella Purnell replaces Olivia Cook in deranged squirrels horror comedy. And it says, Fallout's Ella Purnell has replaced previously announced cast member Olivia Cook in the killer squirrel horror comedy The Scurry. It was announced back in March. It was announced that Eternal Beauty director, this is their words, Craig Roberts, was set to take the helm of a horror comedy called The Scurry, working from a screenplay by The MASH reports Tim Telling, with House of the Dragon co-stars Olivia Cook and Rhys Ifans on board to star alongside, oh my god, I'm going to butcher this name. Is it Papa Esiadu? I don't know how you say that. And Mia McKenna Bruce and Antonia Thomas. It is now filming in the UK, but Joe Blow says, Screen Daily reports that Cook had to drop out due to scheduling issues and has been replaced by Fallout star Ella Purnell. Blah, blah, blah. Two pest controllers who are called to an eco-cafe in a country park to investigate what begins as a routine vermin problem. But as nightfall approaches, an avalanche of deranged squirrels descend, wreaking revenge and mayhem on the staff and visitors in the park. With many fatalities, the survivors take shelter in the cafe as a freak storm takes out the power and communications, leaving them isolated under attack. Blah, 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 blah. Gibberish. Budget of under $13 million. Alright. I mean, this could be a fun movie, but I don't expect it to be actual scary. But maybe gory, hopefully, if nothing else. Also coming from Joe Blow, this one says this. Then I saw this elsewhere, and I was gonna tweet about it, but then it slipped my mind, and I got so overwhelmed. But Susan Backlini, I don't know if I'm saying that right, was the first Jaws victim. Chrissy Watkins has died. She was the first shark victim in 1975's Jaws, and star of one of the cinema's scariest scenes. She was 77 years old. Let's read a little bit about her. Out for a late night swim in the nude. Things turn dire fast for Chrissy Watkins, thrashing about the pitch black waters by a virtually unseen force. Blah, blah, blah. Her short but impactful, this is their words, his words, whoever wrote this, performance in Jaws was also successful in part due to her having a passion for stunt work. She would later have credits as such on 1979's The Villain and 1981's Image of the Beast. She also had a one-off appearance on TV's The Fall Guy, which centered around a stunt director. It looks like she mostly did stunt work, which I guess is pretty much what she's doing in this movie, so rest in peace. She had a long career, it looks like, or a long life anyway, 77. So there you go. That's our news and rumors section. We've already got past the all the bullshit I watched recently, which I feel like I talked about some of those last week, so I might not have taken them off the docket. I can't remember. I don't really write down the dates that I watch movies. It's just when I watch a movie, I add it to my list. I have a document here. So I apologize if I already mentioned those last week. I just can't fucking remember. I can't keep track of the days anymore. They all just sort of bleed together. Alright, first topic. Why is there so much overlap between science fiction and horror fans? Now, I know I've heard some fans of sci-fi and horror refer to themselves as, quote, genre fans, rather than horror fans or sci-fi fans. I mean, God, I don't even really know how to answer this question because, I do consider myself a horror fan, or even a horror aficionado, if you will, if you want to use a fancy term. I love horror movies, but a lot of the horror movies I watch are sci-fi movies, like Alien, and I guess The Terminator, and Event Horizon, and Jurassic Park. So many others. Species, I've already talked about. So many movies with sci-fi elements or overlap. Evolver, Chopping Mall, those come to mind. You could almost make a case for Hellraiser, if you will. Although some would argue it's more fantasy than sci-fi. Definitely Phantasm, for sure. I would probably lump Hellraiser under the cosmic horror subgenre along with Phantasm, I think. Because the puzzle box, which opens the doors to hell, or the other dimension that we refer to as hell, is sort of, it is a type of technology, I guess. It's not enchanted. We saw in Hellraiser Bloodline that it was just created by a toy maker. But anyways, let's get back on track. But I also found out I love a lot of science fiction movies too. I have plus or minus 100 or plus or minus 1 or 200 DVDs, about 1,000 DVDs, plus or minus 100 to 200 DVDs. So somewhere between 900 and 1,200 DVDs. I haven't actually sat down and counted them in a while, but at last count, I was over 800 something, and I've bought a shit ton of DVDs since then, since the last time I counted, and easily, a fourth, if not more, of those are horror, and a fourth or more of them are science fiction, depending on how you stretch horror, and depending on how you stretch sci-fi. Even if you remove ancillary stuff like, Beetlejuice from horror, and, I don't know, Short Circuit from science fiction or Back to the Future, and you set those under comedy, those still are science fiction, technically. But even if you take those types of movies out, I still watch more sci-fi and horror than anything. Anything at all. Especially when you take into consideration the movies that I watch that could be classified as both. And I just mentioned it at the top of the show, or during the news segment. The Multiverse of Madness is a superhero science fiction movie, but it's also a fucking horror movie. It really is. Is it an R-rated, bloody, scary horror movie? Not really, but a movie doesn't have to be scary to be horror, and it doesn't have to be bloody to be horror either. Case in point, Beetlejuice. Or hell, Ghostbusters. Fuck it. Let's go all in. Which is also science fiction and horror at the same time, as well as a comedy. But I don't like the term genre fan, because everything has a genre. Westerns are a genre. Action-adventure is a genre. Fantasy, sword and sorcery, sword and sandal, those are all genres. Rom-com is a genre. That's just, that term to me is too broad. I know what people who say it mean. I know they mean sci-fi horror fans. Because I'm, friends with these people, a lot of them, either on social media or elsewhere. And I've had these discussions, and I hear it come up all the time. But, I love sci-fi movies. Love them to death. I love superhero movies, which I would say the majority are blended genre. Several of them are a mixture of comedy, sci-fi, with a dabble of horror and action-adventure. But a lot of your superhero movies are just straight-up action movies. But they're still superhero movies. They're still kind of, sort of, I guess, quote, genre films, obviously. But, like, Mallrats would be a genre film to me, because to me it's a comic book movie. It's not based on comic books at all, but it's literally a day in the life of a comic book nerd. And it is so authentic, especially to somebody who was a comic book nerd in the 90s. So that movie definitely appeals to me, So, but you could also, okay, I'm also a cinephile. I'm also a fan of film in general. I love comedies, not as many as I do the sci-fi or horror, obviously, and I know I did a video on my other channel about how I'm not a big fan of comedy, because I'm not. But I have over 150 comedies in my DVD collection. So you can't say I don't enjoy comedies. And I'm talking about straight up comedies, like Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, Bruce Almighty, Ghostbusters, fucking City Slickers, Throw Mama from the Train, whatever. Yeah, I like a lot of funny action movies and funny sci-fi movies and funny superhero movies and funny horror. It's a little different. Beetlejuice, I'll give you. I have mixed feelings about the Evil Dead franchise as a whole and the horror or the comedy elements in the horror franchise. Evil Dead. I can tolerate the minimalist levels of meta humor in the Scream franchise, but I ain't sitting through a scary movie or a Shaun of the Dead or a fucking Tucker and Dale, for example. That sort of comedy doesn't work for me. But I do love the Jim Carrey type of comedy, the late night comedy stuff, the Austin Powers, the Wayne's World of it all, the Bill and Ted's, they're and again, they all have, in a roundabout way, sci-fi elements in them. Am I going to put The Mask in my sci-fi section with my DVDs? No, it's going under comedy. Straight up. Same with Austin Powers. But I don't know about Bill and Ted. That one... I mean, you could argue The Mask is more fantasy, I guess, or supernatural than sci-fi, but fucking Bill and Ted is time travel. It's a time travel movie. It's like Ghostbusters. Or not Ghostbusters, I meant to say Back to the Future. I was mix those two up. I don't mix them up in my mind, just when I try to say their titles, my mouth mixes them up, my brain doesn't. I don't know how it works. But anyways, the point I'm getting at is there is a lot of overlap with sci-fi and horror fans. But I want to get to the nitty-gritty, And I think a lot of it has its roots in the origins of sci-fi and horror, going all the way back to the 1950s. You can't really go too much further than that, because then you're getting into the Universal Monster territory and the Gothic horror era. Those are all supernatural. You could even argue eldritch horror, if you want to use a term, that is, I don't know, an academic word, if you will. But, a lot of your so-called horror movies of the 1950s, they are legit horror movies. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, what else? I guess it came later, but Godzilla, stuff like that. There's so many of them, I can't even think of them off the War of the Worlds, Those are horror movies, but they're also legitimate sci-fi movies. So I think our modern trajectory of what we consider horror films does trace its roots, at least by way of extension, through the intersecting path with science fiction in the 50s and the sci-fi horror of the 80s and 90s. The Jurassic Park and Sphere and Species and etc. that I've already talked about. You know, and Alien and RoboCop, etc. I don't know about RoboCop. I think that's more action thriller, I guess. But definitely sci-fi. So some of these films get hard to classify, and I think what the people who refer to themselves as genre fans, as a simple shorthand to sci-fi horror fan, because that's a mouthful to tell people, yeah, I'm a sci-fi horror fan. Well, I'm also a comic book fan, but I guess it would be simpler and easier in one, syllable in one breath, say I'm a genre fan, but I don't like Westerns. Like, hardly at all. Like, even a little bit. I'm not a big fan of, like, your straight-up, B-movie action movies. I like some, but I had this... I was trying to organize my DVDs, and I was trying to sift out the sci-fi action movies, Terminator 2, Total Recall, The Running Man, stuff like that. I was trying to sift that from the non-sci-fi action movies I like, or the non-fantasy action movies I like, so separating Indiana Jones or, The Mummy, etc. And I was finding it hard to come up with pure action movies I like. A few. Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Commando, definitely. One or two of the Rockies. One or two of the Rambos, But man, I'm not a big fan of just a pure, raw action, adrenaline action movie. That's not my movie. Do I want adrenaline, pumping explosions and car chases and, martial arts and all that stuff in my movie? Yeah, as long as it also has robots or aliens or, virtual reality simulations such as The Matrix or whatever. Just give me something else. I don't just want, a dude in a trench coat with a fucking shotgun blowing away criminals. I'm not into that. Unless the dude in the trench coat with a shotgun blowing away criminals can fly or time travel or teleport or something cool. So this does really make me think a lot. Why is there so much overlap between the two fandoms? Because I do know a ton of sci-fi fans. I have friends from all across the board. I have lots of friends, by the way. I'm a fairly popular person on social media. I have over 4,000 followers. I was a journalist for 7 years, so I've been plugged in and connected in the media business behind the scenes. So I'm friends with a lot of writers and journalists and TV producers and podcasters, etc. So I am friends, or at the very least, colleagues and acquaintances with a lot of people in the business and a lot of people who are fans of these genres. And I have genre fans. I'll just use that term as shorthand for the purposes of this video. I have friends who are genre fans who like it all. They love Die Hard as much as they love The Matrix, as much as they love A Nightmare on Elm Street. They love it all. And then I have genre fans who are friends of mine who are science fiction fans. Sci-fi nuts. They live and breathe Doctor Who and Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and what's that other one? Babylon 5 and so many others, and the MCU and everything else. They're just like all in if there's spaceships or technology or advanced civilizations or time travel or whatever. But they hate horror. Like, cold stop hate horror. Hate it. Unless it's a sci-fi horror movie. I have friends who will not watch a Friday the 13th movie, no matter how much I beg. But they'll watch Event Horizon. It's just as fucking scary. And if they're gonna watch a slasher movie, it's Jason X out of all of them. Again, not dismissing these people's opinions or views. This is perfectly valid. It's just, as I fall in the middle. I'm one of those, I like it all, more or less. But I also have horror fans who are straight up horror fans. They want The Conjuring. They want Hereditary. They want The Exorcist. They're not interested in RoboCop. They don't consider the Terminator horror. They refuse to watch Predator or Event Horizon or Species or the Alien movies because to them that's just like, no. They want something different. They want either supernatural or serial killer. They want the visceral, the macabre. They want the blood, the guts, the scares, the gore, the thrills. They don't need there to be technology or advanced civilizations or space travel or time travel, etc. They're fine with a dude wearing a William Shatner mask stabbing people to death with a fucking kitchen knife. So there are distinct camps. There are people who only like horror and they don't overlap with sci-fi horror. And there are people who only like sci-fi who don't like horror at all unless it's sci-fi horror. And then there are people that like it all. I have one friend who is the opposite of all of them. And it's the only friend I have that holds this view. They do not like horror movies at all. Likewise, they do not like science fiction movies or fantasy or fairy tale movies at all. But they love sci-fi horror. That kind of boggles my mind a little bit. Because it's like, I don't know, if you love sci-fi horror, then there should be something about horror in general or sci-fi in general that you would like. But they don't. And they only like a handful of sci-fi horror movies. And I'm not going to name names. I don't know if my friend watches this podcast or not, but I don't want to call them out. I'm not calling them out, I'm just using that as a reference. Because these are the conversations we have when we discuss movies. I have a few friends who are a little bit more particular. I have one friend who I'm not going to identify. I'm not going to identify any of my friends, obviously, because, again, some of them are public figures, some of them are celebrities. Not like A-list celebrities, but like, James Rolfe level of celebrities. I have a few friends in that ballpark. And some that I would say are probably more famous than James Rolfe, but I'm not going to get into it because I'm not trying to brag about who I know. It's not important. I worked in the business for a long time. I got to know a lot of people in the business. That being said, I have one friend who is even more particular. They really only like B movies. Like, just straight up B movies. They don't like blockbusters. They'll watch Troll 2 or a Trauma feature or, Night of the Creeps, but they're not interested in Friday the 13th. They don't want to watch Scream or Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. This one friend I have who's only into B movies. And there are YouTubers. I watch some YouTube channels that are straight up just B movie devotees. And sometimes, some of the B movies they watch would definitely fall under either sci-fi, horror, or both. Absolutely. Case in point, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Definitely a sci-fi movie, definitely a horror movie, definitely a fucking B movie. But I also have a couple of friends who do use the term genre fan, who have applied the term B-movie, I would argue a little too broadly, to movies that, to me, don't really fit the bill of a B-movie. I've heard some people refer to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies as B-movies, and I'm like, no, those are legit horror movies. I don't consider those B-movies. If any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are B-movies, it's Freddy's Dead. But even that was a big budget, major studio release. Of course, the first 4 movies in the franchise were when they were an indie studio, but then they got bought out by Warner Brothers, and there you go. But before that happened, yeah, you could argue those were independent movies, indie movies, low-budget horror movies, sure. But I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a B-movie. Definitely not 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street. That is not a B-movie to me. 1980's Friday the 13th, Mm, maybe. Sleepaway Camp for sure. Absolutely. I'm not going to argue that. So again, there's so much overlap, and it's so hard to, and I told you this was going to be a meaty episode. It's really so hard to just, like, lock it down. And again, part of it is because people's tastes are varied. Like, I have a few friends, more than a few friends, in fact. I would argue the majority of my friends are none of the above. The vast majority of people, I would argue, are none of the above. They like movies in general. Just movies. They like some dramas, and some comedies, and some science fiction, and some horror, and some thriller, and maybe one or two B movies. One or two shitty shark movies. You know, maybe one Exorcist movie. The Exorcist, usually. You know, things like that. But they just like movies in general. You know? I studied cinema in college because I used to feel like I was more of a cinephile, like a fan of cinema and film in general, than an actual, quote, genre fan. Until I started to realize that, yeah, there's the occasional art house movie I enjoy. Occasionally. I would say American Honey. The Virgin Suicides, you know, fall under that camp. Maybe Being John Malkovich. But, like, most of what I like, to be honest, to be face-to-face with you, to be real, most of the movies I like are movies fucking everybody else hates. My favorite Star Wars is The Phantom Menace. My favorite Pirates of the Caribbean is Dead Man's Chest. You know? So, like, I get a lot of fucking shit for that. So, yeah, I know tastes are varied, but, like, my dad's a movie fan. I'll use him as an example. I'm not going to name his name, but I'll use him as an example. He just loves movies. He loves going to the movies. He loves sitting down on the couch watching Turner Classic Movies, or, you know, a movie on TNT or HBO or Netflix or whatever. He'll just sit and watch movies all day long. He loves movies. Just movies in general. He likes the original Star Wars, none of it else. Just it. Just Star Wars 1977. That's it. He doesn't like the special edition. He doesn't like Empire Strikes Back. None of it. Just Star Wars. Because to him, that's a great movie, which it obviously is. He likes The Exorcist. He will not watch Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or any of those. But he'll watch, and I've sat with him, and in fact, that's how I discovered it, Silence of the Lambs or Pulp Fiction, which is, he will not watch anything else with the name Quentin Tarantino attached. But he'll sit and watch Pulp Fiction. You know, he refuses to watch Die Hard in any of the Die Hard movies. But he loves that first, just the first Lethal Weapon. The Marvel movies, it's mind-boggling to me. Literally the only Marvel movie he likes out of all of them. Because me and my mom are big sci-fi nuts, and we've made him watch every one of them. And he said, point blank, out of all of them, the only one he liked was Ant-Man. That's, like, not your no, that's nobody's go-to. What's your favorite MCU movie? It's nobody's go-to was Ant-Man. It is my dad's, you know? But he also likes Westerns. But he doesn't just like all Westerns. You know, he likes A Fistful of Dollars. He likes The Shootist. He likes The Good, The Bad, The Ugly. But, like, he doesn't like The Magnificent Seven. He doesn't like Young Guns. He's not a Western fan. He's just a movie fan who enjoys a handful of Westerns. He doesn't enjoy musicals. He's not a musical nut. But he likes, you know, he likes The Wizard of Oz. You know, he likes Meet Me in St. Louis. But he won't watch Gone with the Wind. He won't watch Oklahoma. He won't watch, you know, West Side Story. You know. So there's those people, too, that are just, you know, fans of cinema, movies, you know. And so, This episode's going to run a little bit longer than I'm used to, but fuck it. I've given you a couple of shorter episodes the past few weeks, so why not? I told you this was going to be a meaty episode. Now, let's see if I can make some actual, logical, intelligent sense out of all of this. Well, I've already brought up the roots in the sci-fi movies of the 50s. And my dad is one of those who will tell you. The Fly, The Blob, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Those are some of his favorite, quote, scary movies. And those are legitimately all science fiction. But they're also legitimately all horror. Just not to harp on this for too much, but my dad likes the original Planet of the Apes. And none of the sequels or reboots or remakes or nothing else related to it. So, he's like a hard nut to crack. I can never predict what my dad's gonna like or gonna hate. He loves The Abyss. He hates Titanic. But he loved Avatar. I mean, he dragged me to the theater. He came home from the theater and turned around and took me right back to the theater he just got out of. That's a 3-hour movie. He sat through a 3-hour movie, loved it so much that he dragged me to the theater to sit through that 3-hour movie again the same fucking day. I don't understand my dad. He's that guy. And that's the thing about movie tastes. Like, I'll pick on my friend. I'm not going to name names, but I'll pick on my friend who only likes B movies for a second. Because, like, I've seen them in our discussions take a movie that nobody's going to say is a B movie and stretch the definition of a B movie to include it. Because they're adamant that they only like B movies. They don't like the MCU stuff. They don't like the Disney stuff. They don't like none of the old, they may be like one or two of the Indiana Jones films, but they consider those B movies. And I'm like, yeah, they've got roots in B movies and the serials and yeah, okay, sure. But those are legit, to me, those are legit blockbusters. I would not consider Indiana Jones a B movie. Maybe Temple of Doom, maybe Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which, again, I really like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So, what do I know? So here's my question to y'all, anybody who watches this video. Go ahead and leave a comment. What type of, quote, movie fan or genre fan are you? Do you like horror movies? Do you like sci-fi movies? Do you like sci-fi horror? Are you into comedies? Do you like it all? Do you like none of it? Are you just watching this channel because you think I'm hot and sexy? Well, if you're my girlfriend, then the answer is yes, but everybody else, I hope not. Alright, moving on. Related, but sort of different from this, I wrote down giant bug movies. I want to talk about giant bug movies. Because, one, there really isn't enough of them. You've got them. You've got, like, it's not even a giant bug movie, Arachnophobia, but you've got, like, I don't know, you got the Mosquito movie from, like, 1990, what, 1, 2, something like that. There's really not a lot of giant insect movies. And so I was thinking about this the other day, because every time I come across a giant insect movie, I'm all about it. I don't like spiders, or cockroaches, or fucking ants for that matter. Well, I don't hate ants. I'll sit and play with ants. I'll sit and play with the ants. I'll give them sugar. But I'll watch a giant spider movie. I'll watch a giant cockroach movie. I'll watch a movie with a giant, killer ladybug. Fuck it. Give me more giant bug movies. I don't know what it is. I know the go-to point of reference in this topic would obviously be Them. And yeah, Them is, I'm not going to say it's a great movie. Oh, far from it. I won't even go so far as to say it's iconic. Maybe among sci-fi fans, or horror fans, or B-movie fans, yeah, sure. But is that it? Is that like our entire representation of giant bug movies, besides that mosquitoes from whatever year it was, 91, 92, or whatever it was, you could stretch, spoilers, you could stretch Mimic into a giant bug movie, but that's a bit of a stretch. Yeah, we get plenty of horror movies with, like, giant reptiles or amphibians or lizards or whatever. Or sharks even. The Meg, Anaconda, you know, Jurassic Park. Those are dinosaurs, but they're still giant lizards, basically. What's the one with the crocodile? Lake Placid? What's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Somebody explain the difference to me like I'm 5 years old. Because I can't fucking tell one from another. Is there a difference? Or is it like frog and toad? It's like it's the same goddamn thing. We just have two words for it. By the way, I don't know what's the difference between a frog and a toad. Obviously, apparently, either. Or a mouse and a rat. Why do we have different words for the same fucking thing? I don't know. English is a weird language, but I'm not getting into that today. I don't necessarily... Yes, I would like to see more movies like them. I'd like to see a giant cockroach movie, or a killer butterfly, giant killer butterfly, or ladybug, or caterpillar, or roly-polies. Jesus Christ, a movie about giant roly-polies would be fucking dope as shit. But I could take it either... I could take it either as, like, a legitimate attempt at a serious horror movie, you know, or sci-fi movie, like a kaiju, like a Godzilla, or a is it King Kong? I almost said Donkey Kong, but I knew that was wrong. Or something that's silly as fuck, like, I know it's not giant spiders, but arachnophobia, you know? A legit scary movie that's also hilarious to some people who have morbid senses of humor. I'm terrified, deathly terrified of spiders, but I'll watch a giant spider movie. A movie about a giant spider, I should say. You know, the giant robot mechanical steampunk spider in Wild Wild West is the highlight of the film. So anyways, I don't know. Next up, let's talk about shitty shark movies. I know Angry Video Game Nerd already did that video. He did a whole video on all the dozens and dozens and dozens of shitty shark movies. I was into shark movies before I watched that video. Yes, I stopped watching AVGN, God, at least 6 or 7 years ago. I don't think, I can't tell you the last, maybe it was that Big Rigs, maybe it was the last AVGN I watched, I don't know. It's been so fucking long, I can't remember the last time I sat down and watched AVGN. But I was into shark movies way before that. You know, I liked Jaws. I thought Sharknado was fun the first time I watched it. You know, didn't get around to seeing it when it was contemporary, but was interested in Deep Blue Sea. And now that I have seen it, I got thoughts. You know, and I'm not going to spoil my impressions or review of Megalodon Rising or Two-Headed Shark Attack, because those videos are coming. They're on the list. But you know, I've seen other shark movies that weren't that bad. And who doesn't love Jaws, honestly? So, alright, here's the question. What makes a good, or I should say enjoyable, bad shark movie? You know, is it like Jaws, where it's like it's obviously a broken mechanical robot shark that malfunctions on set, and it's not scary at all, but it's still scary because of the idea, even though the idea is based on a myth that's actually false? Or is it like the absurdity of Sharknado, or Two-Headed Shark Attack, or Megalodon, or whatever? Or is it just we have a primal fear of anything with teeth that are bigger than us? Or is it because they live in the ocean and we're just inherently scared of the ocean for whatever reason? I don't know. What makes a good, or I'll rephrase it, enjoyable bad shark movie? Well, let's just briefly talk about Jaws. Briefly. I think the reason why Jaws works is because even though it does take this itself very seriously, there's also a brevity to it. It's like, yeah, this is a scary shark, but also sharks aren't scary. They're not even hungry for humans. Whereas something like Sharknado is just so ridiculously absurd, you can't help but laugh at how bad it is. But then you have like Sharks of the Corn, that in my research was made on somewhere between $150 to $300, and it fucking shows, by the way. You watch that and you're like, it's a rubber shark. It's a guy in a rubber shark mask. Oh, you've got to try harder, people. So, I don't know. Because I did enjoy The Meg. I really did. And The Meg 2 while we're at it. So, I think what makes an enjoyable shitty shark movie is it either has to take itself too seriously, like The Meg or Jaws, or not seriously at all, like Sharknado. There can't be an in-between. You can't half-ass it like Sharks of the Corn. You can't half-ass it. You have to go all in one way or the other. Either all in on the it's too serious, or all in on the absurdity. You can't half-ass it. I think there's a lot of shark movies out there that half-ass it. You know? They don't lean into the primal fear and take it seriously, but they also don't lean into the absurdity. They're just like, well, we're going to be absurd and bonkers in this scene, but try to make you think we're serious in this scene, and it's like, I can't take you seriously after that shit that you just showed me. And I can't take your movie seriously if it's a guy in a rubber shark suit. Because then I'm just having flashbacks to that shitty SNL skit from the 80s. No thank you. Alright, last topic, and I'll probably revisit this another day, because I'm running low on time. But the question I'm positing, I'll give a few examples, but I'll give some counter examples to give you some food for thought. Are ghost stories or supernatural stories, hauntings and possessions, the scariest horror movies? So, whenever I ask anybody, name your 5 scariest movies of all time, The Exorcist is on everybody's list. If it's not number 1, it's number 2 or 3. It's on everybody's list. Poltergeist usually makes the list. Since its release, Hereditary has been in the discussion. The Conjuring has been in the discussion. The Shining has been in the discussion. It and The Ring are the movies people usually say are the scariest movie they've ever seen. I have heard people say, very few, but I've heard them say that Halloween 1978 was the scariest movie they ever saw. I've never heard anybody say Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives is the scariest anything they've ever saw. Or Scream, for that matter. Again, scary is not a prerequisite for horror, but we're just because this is a horror show. The question I'm asking is, are movies with either ghosts or possession or supernatural elements by default the scariest? Because for the longest time, the scariest movie I ever saw, and I would have told you straight up, was fucking Poltergeist, 1982. That is until I had a literal panic attack live on camera while I was streaming it on YouTube watching Hereditary. I actually had to pause the movie and take my anxiety meds. I was having an actual panic attack watching Hereditary. I would say if a movie is scary enough to give you a panic attack, it's probably the scariest thing you've ever fucking seen. not very many movies actually scare me at all. But for some reason, haunting movies do. The Changeling is not an inherently scary movie, but it terrified the shit out of me. Now, there are obvious exceptions to this. The Frighteners was not scary at all. Casper is obviously not supposed to be scary, nor is Beetlejuice, obviously. So not every movie that features, or Ghostbusters, those aren't really that scary. Not every movie that features ghosts or possessions are scary, even if they maybe were supposed to be. But that makes me think, what's a haunted movie, ghost movie or whatever, that was supposed to be, like, intended to be scary, that wasn't? Well, the first one that comes to my mind is any of the Amityvilles I've seen, except Amityville Dollhouse and Amityville, I think it was 4, maybe? Those two were legitimately scary to me. I don't know, they don't number the Amityville movies, unfortunately. Dollhouse was scary, and the one with the clock was scary. Whichever one the one with the clock is. Those are the two I thought were scary. The rest of them were just boring or god-awful bad. The Omen is pretty fucking scary. And yes, it won't be number 1 on my scariest movies list, but The Exorcist is on my scariest movies list. I don't know. To me, I think, and I'll probably dig deeper into this in a future episode because we're out of time now. So these are my final thoughts. I think part of it is, with a slasher movie, we don't have time to deal with death at all. The killer decapitates the teenager for being bad, punishes them, or whatever you want to use, terminology you want to use. And then before you have time to mourn that character, we've already moved on to 3 more kills in the movie. So you don't really have time to process death or trauma in a slasher movie or a serial killer thriller. Maybe you do in Zodiac or Seven. But those are like a little, more grounded in reality. But like a possession movie or a haunting movie like The Shining, or The Conjuring, I'll just throw that one out there. That's the whole point of the movie. You are confronting death from the jump. Like from the moment the credits roll. The opening credits, the title card. It's like, alright, now I'm literally thinking about death for 90 minutes to 2.5 hours or however fucking long this movie's going to be. And I think that scares us because, one, we're all going to fucking die someday. There's nothing we can do about it. And none of us, nobody, has a definitive answer to what happens when we die. Nobody does. And if they say they do, they're full of shit. And if they say they've died and come back to life, they're also full of shit. And I'm saying this as an actual pagan witch, who practices witchcraft. I do believe that something happens when we die, but I'm not going to be like, plant my flag and say, no, it's this, definitively, until I die. And then it's too late at that point. I'm dead. But in a slasher movie, yeah, it's like, oh no, they killed Kenny. And then, you're like, oh, who was Kenny? Oh, wait, they just killed Susan. Wait, which one was Susan? Oh, now they're on to killing Tommy. Wait, is it Tommy? Is it Tony? I don't know their names. And then the credits roll.